Order. This is the meeting of the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee for June 25th, 2015. I'd like to start with introductions of the committee members, starting with my far right.
Sean Batchelor.
Dustin Moyes.
Daniel Pepper.
Blaine Meyer.
Doug Neely.
Bob Burns.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler Tice.
Thank you. Next item is approval of minutes from the May 28th meeting. Have you all had a chance to read the minutes?
Yes.
Do we have a motion to accept?
I'll move. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Thank you. Now it's time for citizen comments on issues and items that are not on the agenda. And I understand we have two people.
Two people signed
up. Is that correct, Scott?
Yes, we have Phil Yates and Mike Mitchell.
Okay, I'd like to go over the ground rules for this item. When your name is called, will you please proceed to the speaker table and state your name and city of residence into the microphone. And each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak. And Scott will be our timekeeper. When you have 30 seconds left, he'll give you a high sign. And the general practice is that the committee does not engage in conversation or discussions after the comments. So with those rules, we are ready for our first person.
So I think Phil Yates signed up first if he wants to come up, and then Mike after that. I think you're on. You just grab either one there.
My name is Philip Yates. I live in Oregon City. I own the Singer Hill Cafe over that way a little bit. A couple of years ago, I started playing disc golf. It's a great sport. For those of you who don't know what disc golf is, it's basically the same thing as golf, except you use these little plastic discs, which are like frisbees, but they're not frisbees. They're different than frisbees. It was invented about 20 years ago. It's gaining in popularity hugely. There's 2,000 of them now in this country. About 3/4 of them built in the last 5 years, mostly by city and state parks. It's an extremely cheap way to utilize park land. We have a disc golf course in Oregon City, but the closest one that I play at is in Estacada. There's two actually in Estacada. There's one at McIver, and there's another one at the city. The city paid for it. The city of McIver. I have one called Timber, I think, and the other closest one is in Champoeg. They also have one in Canby that's not very good. The one in Singer Creek was created by an Eagle Scout named Josh Bullfinch through the Grandview Baptist Church Boy Scout troop. He did it as an Eagle project. He raised the money. He went through all this stuff to get permission from the Parks Department, and they put a bunch of handmade baskets over there in that park. And you'd think that would be good, and I've talked to these people, and it's just terrific what they did, but they didn't do it quite as well as it could be done. The baskets themselves are inferior to the ones that are sort of approved by the people who play the game. They're rusty. They didn't use galvanized metal. They have sharp edges. They actually damage your discs if you throw them to you. So if you go over there and you think you're throwing, you actually end up with ruined discs. So I was over there practicing my putting and unable to putt to a basket and thought, well, I could buy one for my basement or my yard, but what if I just donated one to the city and put one in? And I thought I would come here and propose to you folks, I've proposed to the parks people already, I've talked to Jonathan Waverly, proposed to have Singer Hill Cafe spring for one of these baskets. They're only $400. And then to try to engage some of these disc golf clubs, of which there are many, many. Believe me, there are a lot of people in Oregon City who would play this game if there was a park, if there was a course here that could be used. And what I'd like to do is to get on your agenda. We don't have to talk about it today, but I'd like in the future for you, the city, to put disc golf on the agenda. I will take it upon myself to contact the Stumptown Golf Club, etc. I wrote a little one-pager, which I gave to Scott, which I hope has given to you, which basically outlines what I think about the one little thing over here in Singer Creek Park. But what I'd like to do is see Oregon City maybe build a real good 18-hole park somewhere in the city limits, It's just a great way to spend public funds, I think. It's a lifelong sport. You learn it when you're 15. You can be playing it when you're 65, which is what I'm going to be in a month or two. So that's my idea, is to simply get you guys to be thinking about this new sport, which was only invented 20 years ago or so, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. Believe me, the parks that are out there on Saturday and Sunday, they are jammed with people that are playing disc golf. McIver, all of them. They're terrific. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Question.
Thank you very much.
Can't run away that fast. How many holes are at the Singer Creek Park?
I think there are 8, but
Okay.
the problem with that park is they're really only one I can use, because and that's one right in the middle of the biggest field there at the thing, because if you throw it and you miss,
Right.
I always miss. I'm not any good at this sport. I play it. I'm not, it's hard. If you miss any other baskets, you run into the danger of throwing it down in a ravine full of blackberries, and you've lost a $15 disc. So I can't play any of those holes over there. I'd like to redesign all of them, maybe reduce it from 8 to maybe 3, put the baskets right in the middle of the field as opposed to on the edge, until we can have the resources to clean it out and make it into a disc golf course like they have up at Pier Park. The city of Portland has put in a beautiful, huge 18-hole course in the midst of giant trees, just like they've got at Singer Creek, but it's all cleaned out. So if you throw an errant disc, it lands on a field that you can actually find it. So.
Scott, can we put this on a future agenda and have a more lengthy discussion about this topic?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Phil mentioned that he sent me a kind of a written proposal. I didn't forward that to PrAC, not by intention, just because of a bunch of other stuff going on. But I'll forward that to them so they have your written proposal that you sent.
There's a link at the bottom of that one pager that kind of gives you what it looks like to design a golf course, and there's lots and lots of information. This is really it's one of the fastest growing sports in the world, and it's right down the sweet spot for public parks.
I directed Eagle Fern Camp for 7 years out in Estacada, and that was one of the last things that I was part of, is getting a full 18-hole disc golf. Like you say, people are crazy about
It's
it.
just a ton of fun. It really is.
Scott,
Thanks.
just so you know, if you didn't, we just opened a pickleball.
I heard that. We're going to go play that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And,
Mike Mitchell.
Mike. Welcome.
Good evening. Mike Mitchell, Oregon City resident. Just back to give you a brief update on our progress of getting the Oregon City Parks Foundation up and running. We have met again. We accomplished a couple of things since the last time I talked to you. One is we adopted our official mission statement, which is the mission of the Oregon City Parks Foundation is to partner with volunteers, donors, and community leaders to develop, enhance, and sustain a thriving, accessible, and connected system of parks in Oregon City. We're working on, as a group, we're working on 12 or 14 kind of bullet points that'll expand on those goals, or that mission statement, what our goals are, how we plan to operate. We're working on those now. Another thing that's happened since our last meeting is we jumped through the first of the legal hoops that we have to get through, which is being incorporated by the state of Oregon. So we are recognized as a corporation. We have to be recognized as a charitable corporation by the state of Oregon, but before that we have to be a 501c3 corporation, which is the IRS, and before we can do that we have to adopt bylaws. So that's the other big thing that we're involved on now, and thanks to the Google machine, we're cutting and pasting and borrowing from other parks foundations and putting together bylaws, and then we'll need to have an attorney review that with us. Get that the way the IRS wants it, and then we'll go for that designation from the IRS so that we can start collecting grant money or going after grant money and donations and such. The other thing, we do plan to have a presence for the foundation at the first city celebration on July 25th, at the National Night Out on August 4th, and at your Parks Day on August 7th. Mission there being to get the word out about the foundation and just add to our mailing list, get our contacts built up. So
Great.
that's where we're at with that. Bob was at one of our meetings. Thank you for coming to that, Bob. It's good to have that involvement. So thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Well, I guess the next item is the library playground item on your agenda. And I think the way we should proceed with this is to hear first the results of the special meeting that was held a few days back. And I'd like to ask Scott if he'd report on that. And after that, to ask Kurt to talk about the research he's done on the rubberized material that is planned for the surfaces. After that, question and answers from the committee. And then entertain public comment. And any public comment, we'd like to also invoke the 3-minute rule. After that, a staff recommendation, where we proceed, and talk about next steps.
So, excuse me.
So, you're not Scott, but you're Kurt.
I'll start, and then Kurt will pick up quickly afterwards.
Okay, very good.
And just as a reintroduction, we've got Marinko, our library director, Joan Jasper from SE Architects. That's the architect firm working on the library project. Kurt Lango is working with the architect firm as a landscape architect, is doing the playground design, and Kurt's going to actually give you some updated information. So, per what you just asked, Bob, just briefly, since our last meeting last month, we had an at-length conversation about this, and you asked to continue this to this meeting and allow us to gather some additional information and bring back some things that you asked for. But the other one of the other significant things that we did is Maureen and I, Denise Kai, I think those were the 3 staff that were there. And then we had, from PRAC, we had Sean Datchler as the representative, and then a few members from the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. So we put together a sort of a smaller focus group to attempt to reach some consensus on the discussion points that we had at the last meeting. And I felt like we had a really good meeting. It was very productive. Kurt's probably going to talk about some of those things in his presentation. Sean, feel free to mention your thoughts about that, please. And same for you, Maureen. I'm going to save some of those comments because we reached some consensus points that I think we're going to cover here that I think are going to help our conversation along this evening and our decision and recommendation process. But really, it was just a what I would say a positive meeting after what I felt was a little bit of a contentious meeting last time, and it was just nice to sit down with everybody, all the different parties, and really just kind of work through these items and find those points of agreement, which we did. And I think again we'll hear more about that. So what I'd like to do at this point is just turn it over to Kurt. He's going to talk about some of the things that you requested, Bob, but also he's just going to kind of go back through the design a little bit and talk about any potential changes. I guess before I do that, Sean, did you want to mention anything else about the meeting at this point in time, or do you want to just save that? Okay. So at this point, then I'll turn it over to Kurt, and then we'll circle back to some probably staff discussion.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Can we dim?
Reminder, you can get the lights here.
Perfect.
PRAC members, you can switch your monitors over to look at the presentation on your screen.
Thank you. I apologize. Some of the text is upside down. We had to reorient the drawing so everything is facing north. But if you bend your head backwards, then you'll be able to read it. What we thought would be helpful just to begin our presentation is revisiting just very briefly the plans that were presented last year and what led up to ultimately the approval by the City Commission on January 13th. So I know there were some questions about some of the plans and when they were presented. So I just wanted to kind of briefly go through the series of slides. This plan, as well as the following plan, was presented to PRAC on the December 4th meeting of last year. It showed the 2-story addition, the play area that was relocated, certainly keeping the splash play area intact, as well as some stairs leading up to the entry. The other drawing that was also presented was a two-story scheme. There was still some design effort in terms of the internal program and how that was working. So both of these options were presented at that time. The site remained the same from each option. And then based on this presentation, there was also a presentation with the same exact material on December 9th to the City Commission, and then December 15th to HRB. Then in early January, or actually mid-January, on January 13th, this was the plan that was adopted by the City Commission. So just wanted to kind of, I guess, refresh your memory in terms of the different steps and what led to ultimately the approval of this plan. If you notice, we do have the play area, the slide, and the swing set in this particular plan. Also at that meeting, there was some discussion in terms of where the existing play area is, which was shown on this plan. And the architects actually had to move the building over by, I think it was about 50 or 12 feet in order to accommodate the safety zones of the swing set. So the design was didn't really stop in December. It continued to be refined through January and frankly, even after that. So last time there was a request for us to do an overlay of showing the existing concrete pavement and the pathways, play area, and then also the new design or the design that was approved in January. So we went ahead and took the existing survey, and this shows where the existing swing set and slide is, and then where we're relocating it, the pathway that goes through the new play area that is being demolished and relocated, and then also keeping the play area intact. The other diagram, or the other, and I'll get to it in a second, but there was also a request showing where we're putting in new trees versus the trees that we're currently taking out. The heart of the discussion today is to focus on the play area. So this was the slide that we showed last time, showing the play area surfacing being the tile, the swing set, and the slide. And as Scott said, I think there was a very productive, a great meeting with the neighborhood representatives, people from the PRAC board, and also the library, to really talk about material and heights for both the swing set and the slide. Based on that meeting, there was agreement on a number of things. The first thing was for the swing set. Previously, we proposed an 8-foot high swing set. After conversations and discussions, we're now showing a 10-foot high swing set. So that matches the current height of the existing swing set. I'll show an image, but we will have to go to essentially an upside-down U for the side posts in order to support a swing set that's high. We will be matching the same number of seats that are out there right now. There was also a lot of discussions about the slide. Last time we showed an 8-foot slide, and after a discussion with the group members at the meeting, it was decided that 8 foot was appropriate for the play area. I know there was some discussions about whether to go higher or not, but I think people left that meeting feeling good that 8 foot was an appropriate height. So there was agreement, I think, on both the swing set and then also the slide in terms of height. There was still discussions about both the safety material that was being used, whether we use the bark material, the safety bark, or the tile, and then also the slide material itself. At the last meeting, there was a lot of discussions about the metal slide, safety standards, potential or issues with the slide heating up. I think from the park standpoint, there's still a concern about using a steel slide, issues with exposure and those heating up. But there are ways to mitigate that through the safety codes. One is to orient a slide as close to north as you can. The other is to introduce some sort of shading devices. So those things are called out specifically. So at Scott's request, what we did is we've slightly canted the slide. You can see right there, it's no longer straight up and down. To get it a little bit closer to north, those imaginary kind of dashed lines are the safety zones that cannot overlap. So we feel that's heading in the right direction. Also, down at the very bottom, you see kind of a half of a circle. That's going to be ultimately a very large shade tree. We are specifying a 5-inch caliper, so it will probably be anywhere from 20 to 25 feet high from day one. It will not provide, I think, the shade that we would like it to provide, but 5 years down the road, it's an investment. Ultimately, it will provide some shading. So based on those two items, and certainly it's a discussion point, I think that the Parks Department is willing to go with a steel slide with these kind of mitigating factors. The one real issue I think that everyone or the department is standing firm on is the safety material, the safety surfacing. Just given the amount of maintenance that it would take to allow it to serve its function, which is protecting kids, they would have to be there almost on a daily basis to do that. Whereas the tile, even though it's a little bit more investment up front, ultimately it is certainly less maintenance. There were a lot of questions that were brought up last time in terms of potential off-gases or what does it mean to use this sort of tile. So we've spent the last 3 weeks doing additional work or additional research on this, contacting the manufacturer that actually supplied the tiles that you've used at Chapin Park. So a couple things to note on that. Number one, it is, the company is out of McMinnville, so it's a local company. We have a letter from them which we can pass around, which states that all the raw materials are sourced from the United States. So that material does not come from overseas. They've also provided us with testing for lead and mercury and heavy metals that show that it is under the tolerances that are required by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And we've also contacted other cities, other agencies like THPRD. This was an issue that they were not aware of. However, they have heard of issues or potential issues related to synthetic fields and rubber used in those areas. They have a lot of those kind of artificial fields, so that's definitely of interest to them. They have done their own extensive research, and they have found that there's no conclusive evidence that the rubber used in those synthetic turf areas are cancer causing or harmful in any way. So I think based on that, and we're certainly not scientists, but we've done our own research. We've talked to the product supplier. We feel that this is an appropriate product for this area. I just wanted to show you the swing set. So that's it won't be bright red. We will be using a galvanized color, which is also something that was requested.
Just out of curiosity, what's the useful life of those mats? I mean, do they eventually wear out? We've had installations that are like 20 years old, and they're still functioning well. The nice thing about the tiles versus doing something that's like poured in place, because they also do that with the rubber surfacing, is that if one does break down or loses its functionality, you just pop it out and you put it back in. Good enough.
So that is my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the committee?
I had brought up the issue of stormwater and infiltration, and before you respond to it, I'm going to ask Scott a question because one of the concerns about the Ermitinger house was, in fact, the soil was kind of waterlogged. Was that true? Was that one of the reasons that we had structural problems? I think it was brought up early, but I don't know if it was found to be the case.
There were some water table issues somewhere in the area, but specifically with the Ermitinger house, my recollection is that the main issue with the stability had to do with the fill material that was put in, and it was refilled over time. There were some potential water issues, but I don't know that we ever really very well defined that.
No, I know.
But it's known to be that there's some water tables in that area.
I know. Well, I know that much earlier, and it had been dealt with, but we had water issues at the Carnegie itself. The basement would flood, and so I brought that issue up. Did you explore it? And then,
Yes.
and you,
The answer was in the drawings last time, and I just wasn't aware of it. But we are taking water that infiltrates through, and we do have 2 samples of the Roper tile over here. And if you can see the one, the green one, it has kind of an egg carton bottom to it. So that's where the water runs through that to a drain, and then that water then is piped over to this kind of a curved stormwater facility. So this is actually taking water from the concrete and will be filtering it before it goes into your stormwater system. So that essentially will be doing the same thing.
It probably addresses my concern. Because I didn't want, after I thought about that afterwards, I didn't want to actually lead to a greater water saturation and have some of the issues perhaps come back that we had solved before. The other thing I wanted to, could you go back to the slide? The slide. Anyway, Bill Daniels, who's not here tonight, was there at the day of saying goodbye to the old slide equipment. I wore a black armband, incidentally. One thing he mentioned in terms, and you are going for metal, it sounds like. Is that right? Or has that decision yet been made?
I'm going to give you more of a kind of a direct recommendation about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, in any case, he was suggesting not only a northern direction, but whether this could be directed the other direction so it's faced east and north. There's going to be less, it's in the afternoon that slide really heats up, and you may get some benefit. It looks like it's a case of tilting what you got there maybe 180 degrees or so. Have you looked at that orientation, or are there problems with it?
We have looked at that orientation, and frankly, flipping it in that direction, as long as it's 180 degrees, then it's not really it's not an issue in terms of the layout. We just felt, based on our kind of shadow studies, that this would be a better orientation and would get less direct sun versus something that is really more southeast rather than kind of upper kind of northwest. I think
I said 180. I guess it didn't quite.
it
mean
would be
that.
9. What it just would be, it's really 90 degrees,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So I think we felt that this was a better orientation in terms of shade.
I was just thinking of the actual direction of the sun coming in. So there aren't thoughts of having larger trees to the south side.
Well, we do have a larger
To the south side,
tree.
east side.
We do have a large tree right here. We do not have any trees along here. This is where the handicap parking is right now, and there isn't room along here. So we have a large tree right here, and then a large tree right there.
Just if you would just give that a little bit more consideration in terms of where the orientation of the sun is in the morning. I think it may have less impact.
Okay.
Those were my.
Other comments, questions?
Okay.
I just, going back to the surface, because, as I was coming in, I went over and I felt those tiles, and I'm thinking, my experience on Saturday going down the slide, and that was a really fun goodbye to the slide, and cute little video of me posted online of going down the slide. No, it wasn't a selfie.
Okay.
But
Blackmail.
it's just, and I remember hitting that surface, and the surface that's there now, the bark chips that give and move when your feet hit them, and I feel that that rubber surface, and there's no give to it. And I read online, did a lot of research about schools and parks and the surfaces that they're choosing, and I understand that this is different than the turfs that were causing problems with off-gassing. That was those artificial grass turfs, and I know a lot of people are moving away from those, but I still don't see how these turfs really give a whole lot. They just seem so solid to me. And on Saturday, watching our Chair Burns jump off the swing set and thought,
Yeah, I saw that too.
you hit
Bad
that stuff
example.
and it would be like hitting concrete. As it is, the bark chips move. And they move, they give a little bit as you land on them. And it seems like that is safer and would cause less injury to your ankles and things than hitting something hard and solid. That's just kind of my feeling. And so I need, I want some real proof from the city or from you as to how these surfaces do work. I understand that these surfaces would be better if some kid was hanging upside down on monkey bars and fell. And that's a different kind of a bounce that you're going to want than jumping off a swing.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is that the material has been rated and approved by the Consumer Product Safety Commission because they have some very stringent requirements in terms of these surfaces being resilient. And it's a little bit hard just to kind of take one, but if you look at a field of them and you're walking on it, you kind of bounce, kind of up and down. It's not like walking on concrete. And I think that sometimes the issue with the safety bark is that it is pretty movable, and inherently that's sometimes the problem, is that it gets moved around and loses its effectiveness, particularly at slides and at swings, because those are really kind of pressure points where you're always kind of moving things around. So the depth that you need is less. That's where you need more maintenance coming and raking things back to make sure that it's meeting the standards.
Yeah,
Other,
I'll just
Scott.
kind of add on to that. I think you said it well, Kurt. But the main reasons that we're recommending that surface are for safety and maintenance reasons. And I know there's some discussion points and argument points from both sides of that. When I say safety, what I'm talking about is basically what I think Kurt was just getting at the end there, is that the bark chips are nice, and I understand what you're, when you hit those and when they're at the appropriate depth level of the safety standard. So for a swing that can go so high, you're supposed to have them at whatever it is, 12 or 18 inches, depending on a slide. Well, as you know, we've talked about this at length with our discussions here with this committee. Our maintenance department is very constrained. We have 37 plus parks. We have several more properties that we take care of, buildings, et cetera. As Kurt was saying, the thing about the wood chips is that they move and they get displaced, and in order to maintain the safety level, you have to regularly rake them back in and also refill them because they track out or they get carried away or they blow away or whatever. This is a way that we can guarantee that with our maintenance challenges, that we don't have to worry that the chips are in place or what have you. That's not even going to the cost factor itself. As Kurt said, they're a bit more expensive up front, but over the life of them, we believe that they more than pay for themselves. Just a kind of a quick analysis. I'm jumping a little bit off of what you were asking, but since we're talking about the the tiles versus the wood fall material. We did an analysis. It's guesstimating, but it's pretty good. I think numbers that we're using. We converted staff hours and also purchasing, replacing the fall material, the wood chips. We estimate something in the neighborhood of, if we went with the tile, our total staff time would be about $500 a year. That's because as our crew is at the park blowing off sidewalks with the blower, what you need to do to maintain that is basically, one, check that it's in place, and if there's any problem, you can take a tile out and replace it. That doesn't happen frequently, I don't think, from the experience that we know of. But mostly what you do is you clear the surface off so there's no debris, so that if there's leaves or sticks or whatever debris. So we're talking about maybe 2 minutes of, while you're already blowing things off, you just blow the surface off. That converted into person hours, plus maybe replacing a couple tiles a year. We factored in the time to do that, assuming we already had some extra replacement tiles, which we would buy in advance. We're talking about $500 a year versus we did the best guess we could on the chips, raking as much as we're supposed to, replacement, and some other things, and we're at the high end we're well over $20,000 a year. You can go kind of moderate estimate or you can go higher estimate. At the lower end, we're probably at nothing less than $10,000 a year of time and materials that we would spend on this one playground. So the cost is significant, plus just the fact that we can't always provide the level of service that we need. And that's why we're recommending that we do this. And what we'd like to do is implement these in any of our new playgrounds going forward, because of the knowledge that we have now and the experience. And we've done this up at the new playground at Chapin Park, and that's an early experience so far. It's only been open for a little while, but so far so good. So we don't have a lot of these, but going forward, we would like to look at utilizing that, and that's why we're recommending that. So,
Comment that I live close to Chapin Park, and I drive by several times a week, and I've gone over there and walked on the surface, and it is nice and soft, I think, and especially during the rainy season, it drained well. And in the same park, we have the older section, which has the chips, and there were puddles of water, 3 or 4 inches deep at the peak of the rainy season. So during those times, there weren't any kids there. They were all in the new section. So that's my scientific observation. Mm-hmm. Any other comments or questions?
The only one apparently you're considering it is consistency in the material used on the equipment itself and the age of the facility of the library itself. I mean, those style of metal slides are the ones that I used when I was a kid and at Kellogg, and my mother used as a kid when she was at Kellogg. Mm-hmm. And probably about the same era building. So.
Okay.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, what I'd like to do is just quickly summarize from the staff perspective what our recommendation is, and then allow you to have discussion. And I know that you've got some citizens here that would like to speak as well. So Kurt did a great job of summarizing the discussions that we've had, covering hopefully the main points that you had asked for, responding to from the last meeting. I think he hit on all those points. But what I'd like to say is just that, again, since our last meeting, since our last PrAC meeting, we had the meeting with some of the neighborhood representatives and staff, and I think that went a long way towards reaching some consensus points. We had 4 major points that we were kind of stuck on at the last meeting as to which direction to go or not go, and some differing viewpoints. And the 4 points are, and I'll review those and then tell you that as of now, what I believe we have from the recommendation you're going to hear from me is we have consensus with the neighborhood and I'll let folks from the neighborhood speak for themselves if they wish to, but according to my discussions and other communications that we've had, we have consensus on 3 of the 4 major concern items. There is one that we probably are not going to completely agree on. And those 4 points are, 1, the change of the height of the slide from 10 feet to 8 feet. That was recommended, as Kurt mentioned, the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. When we talk about park safety guidelines, this is what we're referencing is, and it's the Public Playground Safety Handbook. And this information is all available online. We've talked about that previously. That's where the recommendations for safety standards come from that we discuss. So the safety standard is not to exceed 8 feet on a slide, and the neighborhood agreed with that and thought they were okay with that, as Kurt already said. Number 2, keeping the swing set at its current height and also maintaining the same number of seats. We had to do a redesign with some a different method of design, but we've got the same, essentially the same usage. Just it's going to look a little bit different in terms of how the structure is shaped. Number 3 is the surface of the slide, and and Kurt mentioned this. The USPC PSC recommends that we use plastic slides as much as we can. That's the recommended material to use versus metal slides because of heat concerns. However, though it's not the preferred method, this same list of guidelines does give us some alternatives to mitigate those concerns about heat, and Kurt already reviewed those, and so I won't go back through those again. I believe that with the ability to mitigate those things, the one thing that I don't think Kurt mentioned that I would like to add about the slide, if we went with a metal surface, I'd also like to have us just put a simple sign up that just says, "Hey, caution, the surface can be warm on hot days," or whatever. We'll come up with some language. So I would add that we would do that as well. And with those types of mitigation, though it's not my preferred method as the staff, we do feel comfortable enough, given that we really heard from the neighborhood that the metal slide was one of the really important items to them for a variety of reasons, and we feel comfortable that Kurt, through his design methods and through our mitigation efforts, that we can live with that, is what I'm saying. And so, the public interest is very strong on that, so we understand that. So we agree on that one. So that's 3 of the 4. The last remaining one is the surfacing, and again, for reasons of what we believe are the ability to maintain that at a safe level, if we have the wood chips as we do now, versus putting in this rubberized surfacing material, will make it safer because the chips will not be displaced. We'll not have to be concerned about whether they're at the right depth, and also the cost over the life. The amount of maintenance from the wood chips to the rubber surfacing is quite significant, and so that's my recommendation, is that we go with those 4 points that I've just mentioned.
Bob, I'd like to clarify a point that I made earlier, if I may.
Go ahead, Doug.
My description wasn't correct, although you might have known what it was. You visualize a vertical line going down the middle, up and down vertical line. It's really a mirror image of that, but with the highest point of the slide being at the top. So the slide actually has an orientation to the east, doesn't receive as much heat.
That would be south.
Is that, well,
That would be southeast.
that is southeast, isn't it?
That's south, yeah.
Yeah, and that would be the hottest orientation.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
We asked the same question, and we felt like it's the orientation right now, even though it's a hair west, but it's facing primarily north.
Yeah, that's not a true west direction, is it?
there's a little north circle right here, so that is pointing north in that direction.
There's a,
Okay, west is this way, north, east. Yeah. Okay, thank you, Kurt.
okay.
I guess this is the time for a public comment. And just a reminder, we are going to invoke the 3-minute rule. So do we have
I can just
people
read
who
the
would
names
like
to
to
you.
address the park committee?
So I'll just read them in the order that they just landed on my stack here. This is in no particular order. First is Kimberly Walsh.
Kimberly. Welcome, Kimberly.
Good evening, PrAC members. My name is Kimberly Walsh, and tonight I'm representing the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. I believe Denise also sent you a letter on behalf of the neighborhood, so hopefully you received that. As Scott has said, we did meet and we did agree on the 3 points. So I will skip over what I wrote on some of that stuff. So down to the materials, our reasons for wanting metal and natural materials are twofold. First, this is a historic district, and metal and natural materials are in keeping with the historic nature of our neighborhood. Second, we are concerned about the toxicity, safety, and long-term maintenance of plastic and recycled rubber. It sounds like we're coming to agreement on the slide. I did find, it looks like the consumer product thing that you held up was in 2010?
I've got the most recent version of that.
I did find a study done in 2011 by students at Worcester Polytech Institute, and they concluded that the color of the equipment does not play a significant role in the increase in temperature of the equipment. They determined that equipment made of rubber and plastic materials are more likely to be hotter than others, and found that slides and protective surfacing, which are made of plastic and rubber, were the hottest types of equipment. With proper positioning and shading, which we just talked about, and signage, those risks can be minimized. This article also talks some about positioning, too. So I think I forwarded that recently, so that would give you more information on maybe how we want to position it. Okay, down to the recycled rubber tile mats. They're made from recycled tires and other chemicals. So the question is, are they safe? A study presented in Chemosphere in January 2013 investigated surfaces containing recycled rubber tires. Their analysis confirmed the presence of a large number of hazardous substances. Another report from the Connecticut Academic of Science and Engineering presented in 2010 said results indicated cancer risks slightly above the minimal levels. However, they went on to say these risks are well within typical risk levels in the community from ambient pollution sources. The study also said the results showed that there is a potential risk to surface waters and aquatic organisms. An article published for the National Center of Health Research in October 2012 said there is increasing evidence that raises concerns about safety of recycled tire materials used on playground surfaces. I'm aware that there are also studies saying that the artificial surfaces are safe. After looking at the literature, several things stood out to me. One, research on the long-term consequences of using this material is limited and inconclusive. There hasn't been a lot of research on it, especially I think the tiles.
Need to sum up, Kimberly.
If I may, she's quoting new material. She isn't repeating herself. If it's okay with the group, we can listen to it. It's up to you.
Well,
But she's not repeating herself. She's going over her
Sum it up,
research.
Kim.
Okay, so one of the things with the chemicals and the toxicity is we're getting, chemicals from here, chemicals from there. There's a compound effect with chemicals. This is hard to study, hard to prove. Okay, we talked about the burn risks. The other thing, there's articles out there that show, like Joyce was bringing up, that the wood chips are safer. There are studies that show that Australia study showed that as they increase the amount of the rubber mats, injuries didn't go down; they went up 20%. So kind of counterintuitive what we were thinking. There's another study or a person that's been in this field for a long time that talks about the rebound. So it doesn't give, your head hits and then it kind of bounces back and you get that back and forth brain injury. So I kind of question whether it's really safer than the wood chips. I understand that the wood chips need to be maintained for the safety, for them to be at the safety level.
Can I pose a question? You're quoting research here. Can you send the material directly to Scott?
I have sent all the material to Scott.
Okay.
I forwarded it to
Yes.
to Bob and Sean, but I can certainly send it to the
Okay.
rest of the committee.
Yeah,
if you'd like.
Okay.
I think you better sum up, Kimberly.
Okay, so that's okay. The only other thing, so that's our position. Obviously, that we would like the natural materials. The other thing I'd like to answer, because it was asked to me by several PrAC members, is you wanted the neighborhood to prioritize. We found that really difficult because both issues are important, and some people did feel the slide was more important, and some people felt like the surface material. So I don't have a definitive group answer on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kim, real quick, I'm sorry. You mentioned a letter from Denise that I should have received, but I don't recall. Is this recently? Denise McGriff, you're
Yeah,
saying.
and basically it summarized, our position more formally and what I just said. I will
Okay.
send it to you.
I'll be reading it.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Because I
There you go.
don't recall having seen that. I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay.
It may have gotten lost, but I don't think I.
Okay, Jesse will read it then.
Great, thanks.
I just have a question for the city, I guess. If money were no object, would the natural materials not be an issue? It's because I'm hearing it's mainly a financial constraint issue.
Well, unfortunately, money is an object. So,
Well, no, I know it
but
is.
Yeah, so I can't really say if money, but it kind of it's a twofold thing. I understand the question that you're asking, Blaine. If we had an unlimited ability for staff to be able to maintain that area or any of the areas, that's it. This, by the way, this isn't just an issue at this park. Of course, we're talking about this one because we're rebuilding the playground. But that's why we're focused on this. But we have this issue at a number of other playgrounds. If we had an unlimited ability to have staff available to do that, it would certainly make a difference. The other part of it is the safety aspect is it's not just a cost issue for paying for the maintenance, but if we don't have the ability to maintain it, in other words, if we don't have enough staff to do the right amount of that, and it is a concern at a number of our playgrounds, then we get back to the safety concern because that material isn't in place, whereas if we have a permanently affixed material, it's there. But again, money is a concern, and that's why we're talking about it.
She was referring to the pooling on there. That looks to me that you've got grooves under there, and I presume that's to transfer water out, or is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So this is designed not to pool. In fact, it's designed to shift the water out of the system.
Okay, we have another
Okay.
Person?
Next person I have signed up is Jesse Buss.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for your time. But I'm also representing the Neighborhood Association in McLaughlin. I'll just read off the comments that Denise had prepared. She couldn't be here tonight. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association appreciated the opportunity to meet with staff and Sean Deschler, PrAC member. Since the last meeting, we were able to accomplish much. Our position has been from the beginning that we preferred that the playground equipment not be moved The path to the library entrance on 6th Street could have been moved to go around the play structures. Be that as it may, the association has been working with the project team and city staff to come to an agreement about the play structures. The McLaughlin Neighborhood Association has supported the following. Number 1, a 10-foot swing, U-shaped to accommodate 4 swings, as shown. 2, an 8-foot metal slide. The slide should be oriented north or east and moved nearer to the tree to allow it to be partially shaded. Number 3, natural material play surface. Our priorities continue to be the preservation of the traditional playground equipment at the historic Carnegie Library Park. Any replacement equipment should match the existing in materials and form. And that's the end of the written comments. Just want to ad-lib here as to one of the directives I believe Prague gave staff back in the day, which is the concept of playability. And Ms. Gifford, you mentioned the give that the current wood chips have and that this may not have, and everyone might have differing experiences there. But if that's true, and if everyone has a similar experience, that directly affects playability. And once you go to this manufactured surface, it may be really hard to ever go back, and that playability aspect may be forever lost. I believe this is the first time we've heard figures on cost, materials manufactured versus natural. So haven't had any chance to analyze that, but based on Scott's numbers of $10,000 a year maintenance cost for the bark chips, low end versus $20,000 high end, I believe is what he said. Correct me if I'm wrong, Scott. That works out to, I'm sorry?
It was actually, the high end was around 30,000.
I gotcha. Thank you.
There's a lot of variance in there, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, working at the low end, assuming $10,000 a year in maintenance fees for the bark chips, that's $192 a week. And on a 5-day work week, that's $38 a day. If it was $20,000 on a 5-day work week, that would be $77 a day. And I imagine at $30,000, that would be well over $100 a day. And I just find it difficult to believe that it would cost more than $100 a day, every day, all year long, to maintain bark chips. That said, we understand there is a difference. It certainly will cost more with bark chips, but we ask you to consider this as an indispensable playability aspect and to take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Right on time.
Are there other comments, Scott?
Yes, we've got more. The next person is...
I had a question about playability. Just wanted to go back to Bob's comment about his observation at Chapin Park, and you said that the bark chip area was not, if I heard you correctly, was not used as much during the inclement weather, and the other was used more.
When they're standing in water, there are very few children in that area. They all move over to the other area.
Okay.
I would note on that, we do have probably, I can separate that issue from this playground a little bit because we have a drainage problem at Chapin Park that we likely don't have as much of as at this site. Just to make it clear on that.
I would imagine that they would have some kind of studies on this as to playability, because that's an important issue. And if you put a certain material down and kids just don't want to play on it, that would be a concern to me. But do we have those kind of stats or observation or?
Well, again, we've only got the one playground so far, and that's a small sample size. Kurt mentioned some other park and rec agencies. I don't know if you want to expound on that at all, Kurt, from the research that you did, but Kurt looked at other agencies that use this type of material, and I think the results were positive that we heard, but I don't know if there's anything else to say.
Raising 3 kids, we went to a park, whatever was there, they just enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So from a kid's standpoint, I don't know, but anyway, it would be neat if there were some stats on that.
Yeah. Again,
Mr. Chair, just for the good of the order, I'd love to continue with public testimony, and then we can really engage. I think Blaine's got a great question, but I'd like to have us be able to discuss that all together at once.
Okay. That's what we'll do.
So the next person we've got signed up is Janine Offit. Thanks.
Welcome, Janine.
Janine Offit. I'm from the neighborhood, the McLaughlin neighborhood. And my main concern are the rubber mats. And I found 3 articles on saferchemicals.org that I highly recommend. One of them was primarily about crumb rubber turfs, but it also applies to these mats. And it talks about high levels of lead being found in some crumb rubber turfs. Let's see, turfs that are made from recycled tires. There tend to be several different brands involved, and the EPA has indicated that there's been mercury, lead, benzene, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, arsenic, and other heavy metals and carcinogens, to name a few, found in these tires. Old tires pile up in landfills and may cause numerous environmental concerns as they sit for years. Figuring out what to do with the waste is tough, but using them in fields frequently used by children isn't the answer. Children's young growing bodies are more susceptible to toxic chemical exposures, and with ingredients like lead, mercury, and other heavy metals, caution is necessary. Dozens of cities are standing up to block the installation of the potentially harmful surfaces. New York State banned crumb rubber from all future artificial turf installations. A state senator in California wants to ban recycled tires from being used in synthetic turfs as well. Last spring, several current and former soccer goalkeepers were diagnosed with rare cancers. All of these athletes played on artificial turfs that contained crumb rubber from recycled tires. There's being suggestions made that kids shouldn't lay down or sit on these rubber mats to limit their exposure to the recycled rubber. They're talking about avoiding them on hot days because on hot days gases can be emitted from them. In another article about this, from a report from Environment and Human Health Incorporated, they talk about conditions in factories where these where tires are made and where tires are recycled, and health reports from workers that I'm sorry, I'm trying to cut it down a little bit. Talking about occupational studies that document health effects ranging from severe skin, eye, and respiratory irritation to 3 forms of cancer. Now, the relationship between exposures for these rubber workers and those experienced by people using athletic fields and children in playgrounds covered with ground-up rubber tires is not known. But we do know that many of the same chemicals that rubber workers are exposed to have been released from the ground-up rubber tire crumbs. Use of recycled tire shreds and crumbs in athletic fields, gardening, and playgrounds involves repeated and direct exposure for children and adults to tire dust and some chemicals similar to those tire plants. In summary, the toxic actions of concern from materials that were released from recycled crumb rubber include severe irritation of the respiratory system, severe irritation of the eyes, skin, and mucous membranes, systemic effects on the liver and kidneys, neurotoxic responses, allergic reactions, cancers, and developmental effects. And then we get to an article posted in Health Science called "What Are We Doing to Our Children's Brains?" and talking about the great rise in things like autism and hyperactivity disorder and a lot of neurological disorders. Let's see, autism has climbed 300% in the last decade.
Can you summarize, please?
Yeah, so in the past 30 to 40 years, scientists have begun to recognize that children and infants are far more vulnerable to chemical exposures than adults. It has also been discovered that very low levels of exposure early in life can have profound and lasting effects. And one of the most disturbing things is that developmental neurotoxins have become very widespread and ubiquitous. So that's basically it.
You've done a lot of research. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm concerned because I have multiple chemical sensitivities to myself and don't wish it on anybody else. And I don't want to be playing on surfaces like that with my grandchildren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last person I have signed up is Tracy. And Tracy, I can't tell your last name. Is it Rock? Great. Thanks. Tracy Rock. That's okay.
So mostly I just have questions. I'm a fiscally responsible person. So for me, I want to know what it costs to redo the existing park. We live in a community where we recycle, we reuse. What was the cost to pay for the landscape architect, the professional fees, these meetings, the site work, all of those things? 30,000, 40,000? I would like to know that. I would like to know the cost of just the rubber matting. What does that cost? I would also like to know what the city spent last year on maintaining the bark chips, because I'm pretty sure if you spent $10,000, you got ripped off. I live across the street from the park, and I see the kid that uses the blower to reposition the chips once a week. Takes him about 5 minutes. I would like to know who's going to install the rubber tile, if it's going to be installed. I would like to know the maintenance requirements other than blowing it clean, because I'm pretty sure that it requires some sanitation or antifungal, because it's a rubber porous surface. And we live in the Northwest, and it's next to an aquatic feature that's going to make it prone to growing algae and different fungus that might be slippery. So I'd just like to know what the manufacturer recommends for that kind of maintenance. And then I read a lot of the articles that Kim had, and there is an increased risk for injury on the rubber material. And if anybody watched women's soccer, they know that the World Cup, it was a huge deal that the women had to play on artificial turf versus the men's grass, because they're more prone to injury. They're more prone to long bone fractures, they're more prone to head injuries, and they're more prone to abrasions. And when you fall on bark chips, it gives. You're not likely to skin knees, elbows, things like that. So I'm wondering, with the rubber matting and more exposure to abrasions, is there a bloodborne pathogen plan in place for the library? Because when a kid skins his knee and bleeds all over the rubber mats, somebody from the library is going to have to come out and deal with that. So those are my questions.
Are those questions all written out?
They are in very messy handwriting. He couldn't read my last name, so I worry that he's not going to be able to read this, but I can type them out and email them if at all possible. So my last little point is, I live in the historic district. If I want to change my windows to vinyl windows, I can't do that. It makes more cost-effective sense. It's more ecologically friendly because I can save energy. But because I'm in a historic district, I have to pay for wood windows. Shouldn't the city be required to pay for wood chips?
Add that to your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any others, Scott?
That's all I had signed up, unless there's anybody else that didn't get a chance to speak.
Okay, this is a time for our discussion. So if anybody has any comment or questions they'd like to
I
ask?
have a question for Kurt, because Mr. Longo, you said that the material was all U.S. sourced, and since there may be a couple rubber plantations possibly in the South, could you kind of give us an idea of what you mean by that?
Sure. The source material, it is shredded tires. It's recycled rubber, so tires and other rubber products. Those are all sometimes these tiles will bring in that material from overseas, but this company in McMinnville guarantees that all that recycled rubber is from the U.S.
And Kurt, I believe that's the company, did we not determine that's the same manufacturer that we use?
It is the same
Chapin
manufacturer
Park?
that supplied Chapin Park's rubber tiles. Yes. And I know it was not your question, but I just wanted to reiterate that we also got material from the product supplier where they gave us test results for mercury, lead, and other soluble metals, and it all was below the threshold that the Consumer Product Safety Commission has. So they have tested this material.
Other questions?
Just one question, just to clarify. So when you talk about the material being U.S. sourced, does that mean the tires themselves are all manufactured in the U.S., or are the tires recycled in the U.S., but could be from overseas?
I can't answer that question. What they said is they get most of the tires, or the tires from Les Schwab, is what he said. And so, honestly, I don't know where the original source is.
Well, most of those are actually manufactured overseas, but so just curious, because I mean that's ultimately the source of where the rubber comes from. So,
Is that considered a crumb rubber source? I mean, when reading all the articles about crumbled rubber, is that considered crumbled rubber? Or because I know that there's a difference. For a while, they were taking just shredded rubber and crumbled rubber and not compressing it into tiles and using that as surface on playgrounds. And I think a lot of the research in the articles that Janine provided, and I thank Kim for forwarding a lot of that information. I spent some time reading all this stuff, and so I was trying to figure out what are they meaning by crumbled rubber, what is shredded rubber, and what is compressed rubber. And so that's part of where I'm confused and trying to understand what all those terms are. I don't know if you have any better definition for any of those things.
I'm sorry, I don't. I know that we had conversations with THPRD because some of these issues have been raised with them. I've done a lot of the research on the crumb rubber, which is associated with the synthetic turf fields, and THPRD provided us with a number of studies which they feel comfortable with that shows that there's no correlation or there's no kind of heightened toxicity with that particular crumb material that they are using. I don't know what the correlation is between that crumb rubber and the rubber that is over there.
I would add, though, I'm not purporting to be an expert on that differentiation either. There's a lot of information that's been shared from different viewpoints. I do know that the references that have been made in some of the information we've received, and if you do research, you'll see this a lot, is there are concerns about the small crumbs that are in the synthetic turf fields, which are small particles that they put in to kind of be a filler material to keep some of the compaction in those synthetic turf fields. My understanding is that those are something that are of concern because they're smaller, they're more finite, and they actually get lifted up in the impact sports, whether it's football or soccer or whatever. They get kicked up and they get rubbed on, and then they come up and they actually the particles stay on clothing and they maybe go home with you or whatever. But I know that the small crumbs in reference to the athletic fields is a differentiation from, say, the compressing of the rubber in these mats. That there are concerns about the little fragments that are intentionally loose in those fields. They used to put sand in them, but then recently, for whatever reason, in the last few years, they've gone to these rubber fragments, and they're starting to look at that because they're really tiny, and they actually kind of come up into the air. And I don't know whether there's issues about breathing those pieces in or just ingesting them because you can actually eat them, unintentionally, or all those kinds of things. I know that some of the information I've read, there's a strong differentiation when you read about the synthetic turf fields and the small pieces that are in those fields that are intentionally supposed to be loose and kind of pop up as there's impacts made. I do know that these are designed to not do that. So do what you will with that bit of non-scientific information, but that's some of my research has, I know there is some strong indication about concerns about the synthetic fields.
Okay, anybody else? Well, I guess we should hear a staff recommendation.
Well, again, to reiterate, I'll just sum it up in a sentence for you from what I said previously. My recommendation, and this the staff recommendation, is that we proceed with the 8-foot slide, metal surface with those design conditions that we've discussed, the 10-foot U-style design swing set, and we are recommending use of the rubber play material, fall surface.
Okay.
I have a question. Since the swing the slide just came down, and that was wonderful. It's not going to be rebuilt for what, a year and a half, 2 years. Does PRAC's recommendation on the surface need to be made tonight?
Do you want to comment about the timeline, Mo?
Welcome, Maureen.
Hi. Thanks for having this topic again. So I asked the same question because, I thought, why is it a big deal? And what I found out from the architects, and we can ask Joan, who's right behind us, is that this really is a big deal to find out as soon as possible what that surface is going to be, because it's kind of a domino effect. What they lay this on top of, and then what goes underneath that, is done very early on in the building. Like, one of the first things that happens is just that infrastructure underneath, and how that goes in is dependent on what's on top of it. So unfortunately, it needs to be made sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing
Can you
on that.
confirm-
Denise said at our meeting last week specifically that the drawings for stormwater would include, for example, the piping underneath the rubber matting, and that goes into the first permits.
Thank you, Maureen.
What's the completion timeline, Mo?
The completion timeline is 13 months. So if it starts in August, then it should be done in late September 2016.
Okay, thank you.
I just had one thought. I have one thought about the bark issue and the cost, and I know that I haven't played golf for a long time, but I mean, it used to be that when you were in a sand trap, that you would rake your own. Does anybody play golf here? That you would rake your own footsteps, is it, or you'd rake up after yourself? And I don't know if it would be possible, if you wanted to keep the bark chips, that you would have some kind of a plastic or a wooden rake there. You could rake up after yourself. Put a sign up saying, "Please rake, smooth out the wood chips after yourself." What kind of material is across the street and the tots? What do they use there? That's wood chips, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
So that's all I have.
Well,
Doug.
what is actually under that material? I mean, you say there's piping, but how does the water get into the piping?
It's concrete.
It's concrete, okay.
Well, I guess it's time that we take action, take a position. Scott, you have a comment or question?
I'm Sean, but
Sean.
my brother's name's Scott, and my mom calls me Scott all the time, so I answer to it as well.
It seems to work. So
I would like to take a moment and kind of share some thoughts. So I was the PRAC representative at the meeting a week or so ago. I have read all the links that Ms. Walsh provided to us, and read more than I ever thought I would. And to share a little backstory, just 2-3 months ago, we were at Oregon State watching a girls lacrosse game, and my 3-year-old daughter was sitting on the ground, and she was fascinated by the little rubber pieces that she could pull out of that. And I'm definitely concerned, although it was a brand new field, so I'm hoping that they have thought ahead and are a little more proactive than we all have been 10, 15 years ago, and have a new surface underneath there. So maybe it looks the same, but it's not. But some of that stuff is definitely concerning. what my personal takeaway was from most of the research that I've done is that there is a clear distinction between the crumb rubber turf that is movable and becomes airborne than the solid mats. So I am personally comfortable with my child playing on these solid mats. One of my biggest concerns is we have a $2 million budget shortfall when it comes to playground maintenance. And with that, as PrAC members, it's our duty to maintain equal and fair play across the entire city. And to do that, park staff has to be spread across all the playgrounds. And with that, we need to consider the safety of all the playgrounds, and they all need to have their bark chips swept evenly more than once a week. Because at any moment that bark chip falls down below that 100% mark that's specified, it's no longer safe. And we don't know when that is unless we have people there every day, multiple times a day. One of the articles that Ms. Walsh sent I thought was really interesting. The headline was, "It's time to ban rubber safety surfacing." I was intrigued by it. The person seemed quite knowledgeable. But the takeaway at the very end shocked me, and I'm going to read this directly. "Without well-done accident and injury data, we don't know this for a proven fact, but the trends are very suggestive. Until proper science can be applied to this critical question, I call for a moratorium on the use of rubber playground surfacing, except in areas where EFW, the bark chips, become displaced with use, such as the bottoms of swings, and for accessible routes of travel to transfer stations." So my takeaway is the two pieces we're looking at right here are specifically what this expert is saying. I want to ban it in every place but these two places. So I would like to make a motion that PrAC fully support the current staff recommendation, and for the four elements that we've discussed. I think a lot of people have poured their personal time, staff time into this, and I think we're ready to make a decision.
Have a second?
Second.
A motion, a second. That PrAC supports the staff recommendation. And any discussion on the motion?
I still, it's the monetary amounts that have been given to us as to how much it costs for the bark chips is kind of astonishing. And it seems like if that was the case, why weren't a lot of the playgrounds replaced with solid rubber mats years ago? If you're really saving, $20,000 a year, that it surprises me that it would be that much. And I still want to go back to the playability, and I don't think my ankles could take that rubber mat, as long as it could certainly take those movable bark chips under my feet as I push myself back and forth on the swing.
Other comments?
I would imagine the costs involved are more than just the materials themselves, labor, benefits, other things that staff require. Am I right on that?
That's the majority of those costs.
Mm-hmm.
The replacement of the material is fairly substantial, but it is mostly in labor costs. And so, Joyce, I understand what you're saying, that if we're simply spending that money, why don't we just start replacing those playgrounds with that material? A lot of it is tied up in the labor, which it's not replaceable to just take that and then just start buying. So I think an important point here is we've only got one existing of these. We'd like to implement more. We just happen to be talking about this playground and reviewing the design of this playground. We have the opportunity, because we're purchasing new materials, to install this type of material. And so we're going to continue. My recommendation is anytime we look at a playground, either a new playground to build or a replacement playground, we will definitely be recommending this type of material.
What is the surface at the Kanema Children's Park?
It's wood fiber. So yeah, we built that 3 or 4 years ago now. So within the last year and a half or so, we've started to really look at this. So yeah, again, just from the point forward of the last one that we did at Chapin, and from that point forward, we've got enough good information that we feel that it will make that much of a difference.
Any other comments before we take a vote? I'd like to make a brief comment. We have a paid consultant that's done a lot of park design, and we have a very competent staff that spends all their time in park and recreation situations. So I wouldn't feel comfortable substituting my judgment for theirs. So I support the motion. Any other comments?
I guess the only one that I would make is the one thing I look at working in healthcare is what hospitals use. And I know at Dornbecker we actually have the same material used in the playground areas at Dornbecker. And of course that's not an option. We didn't have an option for wood chips there. That's within an enclosed building space. But the Joint Commission that then controls our accreditation in the hospital actually recommends and certifies this material as well as a safe product in a medical setting. So I don't know what kind of weight that carries, but that's a large body that actually says, no, they've tested and they say that this is the way we should go. So
I wanted to make one point. The comment was the cost of the consultants and so forth. The fact that we go through a major public process and all of these things is costly. I mean, and the process has resulted in change in the original designs throughout the whole library design structure, but also to the playground design structure. Something that would not be necessary if we didn't have the public comment that actually lets us look at it and recommend changes to it. And there have been several changes that have been made to this, not the library itself, but also to the configuration of the play equipment and so forth. It's a costly process, but in the end, I think it's worth the effort because we get a great deal of input, and a great deal of it is useful and has driven the design process.
Everybody ready? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no.
No.
Okay,
No
then
here too.
2 noes? Okay, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 yes and 2 no. So the motion passes. And thank you all very much for your input. And now we move on to the next steps. Thank you very much. Anybody want a break? Or we just keep going?
keep going through.
Keep going. We are on a Park Day event. Oops. Thank you. Everybody left? Oh, there. This will be very, very brief. We met at 6 o'clock and had a nice conversation about the Parks Day event coming up August 7th at the Wesley Land Park. And we're going to meet again at 6:30, the evening of our July meeting, right?
20.
What is the date of that?
July 23.
July 23rd meeting to finalize preparations. And since you were all there, I won't say anything else unless anybody
We have our
wants
marching
to.
orders.
We all have our marching orders, and we'll move forward. Next item is our annual report to the City Commission. That's scheduled for July 15th. And Sean, not Scott, and I are prepared to present the report. And I've been drafting some things, and I'll be sure and share with the committee what my comments will be for that. and of course solicit feedback if I've missed some things that I didn't have on my notes. And Scott, you're going to do the goals for 2015, 16. That'll
Yes,
be
sir.
your. Okay, great. Any comments or suggestions on that item?
Thank you.
Okay, Willamette Falls Legacy Project, and this is an update by Scott.
Thank you. This is just your standing update. We have some, since the last meeting, we have some pretty big news for you. There was a major event that was actually held at the site on May 29th, and it was attended by Governor Brown. And at the event, the governor announced the selection of the schematic design team for the Willamette Falls Riverwalk. And the team consists of the consultants of Mayor Reed, which is a local Portland firm, Snowhetta, and Dialogue. There are three different firms. So Mayor Reed, Snowhetta, and Dialogue, and that's the team of consultants. They each play a different role, and they will work together to create a design for the Riverwalk that, as we've discussed, will help transform the vision for Willamette Falls into a reality, and with the ultimate goal of connecting people back to the falls themselves and creating a destination. As I think you know, there is a website dedicated to this project, rediscoverthefalls.com. If you'd like to know more about the design team, the design process, it's always updated, and so I encourage you to visit that. No, not so much.
I went there today, and it
Okay.
actually said it's being
It
revised
said there
now,
was
and
some
they-
revision, yeah.
They almost had no current information.
Well, the design team is on there, and there's some links to those organizations. It will be updated when there are, for example, public forums announced and so forth. Yeah, good clarification. Thanks, Sean. And so that's the major update at this point. So that was a very significant hurdle, that another monument that we've achieved in the process with the other partners. So,
I wanted to comment. My understanding, there was a huge number of people who submitted proposals nationally, but actually, I believe one of the firms you mentioned here is actually a Norwegian firm. I think it's probably.
I believe that's correct. That's Snowhetta, yeah.
Yeah, Snowhetta is a Norwegian firm, so they've had applications from all over the place on this project, and this one rose to the top.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The level of proposals that were received through this process was outstanding, and I think I was not on the selection team, but this selection team I know had to make some difficult choices and go through some really, really good proposals. These were world-class design teams that were proposing on our project, which I think it says a lot about what we're dealing with here. So.
And that public process, that starts in July and goes for 18 months, is that my
That's
understanding?
approximately correct, yeah. I will be sure to keep the committee informed of any dates that I know of that you'd be wanting to be interested in knowing. So that's approximately the timeline that I understand as well, Blaine.
The other thing that was announced was that we did receive state recognition as a heritage site from Tualatin, the mouth of the Tualatin to Clackamas, and that now we're in the process of applying for national heritage recognition. Is that correct? And if we receive that, we'll be the only one on the West Coast?
Something to that effect, yeah. So that's I think you got it correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned that about tours, and
yes,
and I don't know how can you get on one of the tours as a PRAC member to.
Depends on how much money you have.
No, it doesn't.
Blaine's joking aside, I will let you know that I think we've talked about this before, and actually I think there's been some interest. So thanks for asking that question. We can do one of two things. There are regular tours offered just to the general public, many or most Fridays, and you schedule those through the city, and I can help facilitate that. Or I have mentioned this to it's our planning department that's leading this effort for the city. I've mentioned that PrAC has expressed an interest in maybe doing a group tour where as many as possible could come and we could do a tour on some Friday that there's an otherwise a light tour or something, and I would be happy to coordinate that. So either way, I can help facilitate that. You just need to let me know what your preference would be.
I can ask who has not done it. If you can raise your hands. Because I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I think the point is, I think some of us would go another time. I mean,
Exactly.
I've been
Thank you,
4
Don.
times, and from a park standpoint, I think it would be nice to have a focused park tour, because some of that area is ultimately going to be a recreational area, and I think it's kind of critical
Yeah.
that we go out there and, as a group, and look at it that way, even though we've taken the tour before. And maybe some of your staff ought to come on it too, especially if you have some of the more junior staff who haven't been out there.
I agree, Doug.
Would the committee like me to just work towards setting a date specifically just to get a PrAC tour, and then I'll
I think
coordinate
that'd
with
be
you
good.
by email, and we'll see if we can't find something that works. Again, most likely this is going to be on a Friday, unless there's some special circumstances that would drive us doing that differently. But it would probably be a Friday, so we'd have to kind of work around. I know a lot of you have commitments and work and so forth. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because even the last time we had to cut it short because we had a PrAC meeting to come back to, and it would be nice not to have a something constraining us on the tail end. I felt like we almost had to rush at the end, and I was still sucking it in.
Can I make a suggestion too, that the tours are kind of set to do certain things. Perhaps you can talk about having the tour having a Parks and Recreation focus, and perhaps have the opportunity to discuss some of those things specifically on the tour.
Okay.
I might ask, and if the answer is no, that's fine too, but with bike paths and ped trails and so forth being in there, if the Trail Alliance might be good. We have a small board, but might be good to invite them along on this one. It would tie in.
To connect in.
But then, the group can't be too large.
Yeah,
So,
but I think there's some scales of efficiency with, if you're going to do it, get some folks. It just depends on how many staff our planning folks have to lead the tour, and if it's a big group, you got to kind of break it up a little bit. But I would be willing to look at that if you thought that. How many people you were talking about playing?
4, 5, yeah.
Should be easy.
I think Joe Merrick's been on the tours, but there are a couple I know that haven't, so they would probably really appreciate.
Is that the Octa group you're talking about, or was
The Oregon City Trail Alliance?
Yeah.
Octa. Never heard of that.
That's a good idea.
It could be our logo.
Has there been any discussion who's going to be doing the maintenance on that park, or that walkway, that park, whatever you're going to call it?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion going on. So there's the design, there's the overall, the whole site as a concept for the public access plus the private development that is likely to occur, and then there is the maintenance and management of the site from the public facilities, which is the Riverwalk mostly, and also some park sites. Those are all ongoing discussions, and as those issues become a little bit more tangible that we can report on, I'll certainly talk with PrAC about that and what the impacts are. But there's just a lot of moving parts right now. Nothing has been decided. There is a separate another study going on as a piece of the whole project. A firm called Eco Northwest is doing a basically sort of a management study of the site and what the impacts might be, and looking at other potentially similar types of facilities, if you will, although this is totally different than a lot of things, but similarly operated types of facilities, and case studies and that kind of thing to report on, so we can make some informed decisions. So
Who does the maintenance on the promenade, or not? Okay, I'm sorry. The part that was redone, I don't. Okay, I should know.
Willamette Terrace.
Thank you, Willamette Terrace. Who does that? Is that?
the city does.
Okay, so it's not parks. It's the city.
Well, that's technically the Willamette Terrace piece is a public works facility, and this, kind of gets into the minutia, but that's a public works facility, but it connects to the Willamette River Trail, which goes, if you continued south, it goes all the way through Johnstone Park and down to Clackamas, and that's a park facility. So some of that is crossover maintenance, if you will. But the Willamette Terrace is kind of a small piece of the bigger maintenance piece on that.
But that's going to kind of connect up with what was going to be built, right?
That's correct. So that's all being worked on and will be figured out at some point. Yeah.
Next item.
Okay. That's all I've got on that. So I'll get back to you on the tour. I think that's great that everybody wants.
It's a good idea. Okay, art in the parks, item 5E.
Okay, I
Whose
guess
item
that-
is that? Was that you,
That's
Roger?
me, Roger.
Okay.
Well, I like to table it again. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, just to refresh everybody, I brought this up because of the art that was in Library Park at one time. There were two pieces, and one was sort of a seahorse type, and that artist actually is pretty well known in Portland, and but I know that there were some people that didn't care for that art, but that's really not what I want to talk about. I did some little bit of research because I was trying to find out how that art got there, and so I went through all the different departments and finally ended up. They said, "Well, why don't you call the library and ask them?" And, and that's what I did, and I got an answer that. The art was just kind of placed there by the artist on loan. That was the process.
Just walked in and stuck it up.
Just kind of plopped it there, and so I don't know how long it was there. It's probably there at least 2 years, I think, at least, as far as I can remember. So I'm kind of thinking that if that's our park under our jurisdiction, that I don't know if that's the way we want to go, is it with putting art in the park. So I'd like to suggest that we take this up and maybe make it a little more procedural, or what I found this piece right here is not art in the park. This is in Ashland, but it's a piece of art that was under the city. It was placed in front of a music store, but the city said, "Okay, we'll let you put a piece of art." And the art itself is a loaner art, and the city in here they said, "Okay, this is that little spot is under our jurisdiction," and that's just to explain what this is. And I'll just read off a few things that I thought, some of the things are taken. There's provide some of the things here, items that might be included in the policy. If we decided to write up a policy, would be provide guidelines for a site selection for placement of art in the parks, establish uniform standards for art placement and presentation. 3, design an artist agreement determining a period of time the art on loan will be displayed. 4, design a written agreement of legal instrument granting the city permission and control of the property for the time the art is displayed. 5, provide a map of the property indicating the location of the art. In other words, it'd be in the park. 6, provide signage with artist information if the art was purchased, donated, or on loan to the city parks. And the last one would be establish partnership with local art groups, which to get some help from them on this, because since we don't have an arts council or.
Do we have any guidelines, Scott, in the city? I know we had some artwork done down at the RV park.
We do have public art guidelines. So there's a process when we install anything in one of the city's public facilities, be it in a right-of-way, in a park, in a facility. And so we followed those guidelines when we've done installations. The most recent is the one at Clackamas, the entry sculpture with the sign. We've done one at End of the Oregon Trail with the bike rack. That's kind of the unique artistic bike rack. We did that through an art process. And there have been other, not just in parks, but other city.
We had Public Works art
pieces.
project.
Yeah, that's happened. So anytime that there is an art installation in a city public facility of any type, we follow those guidelines. There is a policy.
Is it possible to share those guidelines with us so we can have a look at them? And
Absolutely.
would that help in your?
Well,
would
I'm
you-
just bringing it up for discussion to see what everybody else thinks of it. And since everything else that happens in parks seems to go through us first before we can make a recommendation to the city commission, it seems like that would be a logical item to have on our list too.
I think it'd be good if we knew what the rules are now as we
They are.
discuss the issue, because I don't know what they are, and we probably all should know.
Yeah.
I think reviewing the rules would be good, and I think reviewing, as Scott deals with other department heads and reminds other department heads that may have components of city property in a park, that there are policies maybe already on board that may address it too. It maybe is just a little bit of education, and we may have something already in the works. But I'd be curious to see it all too.
But I think having rotating exhibits or something of that nature is a good idea. It's a cultural center, and I think art could well be part of that.
And with the foundation coming on, I'm sure
Yes.
they might want to spring for some art once in a while. So
Good idea.
Or pedestals for people to put their art on, rotating.
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
So
you-
what I'm hearing is the PRAC would like me to share, or send to you the city's public art guidelines or policy that we
Yeah.
already have in place, and then I guess you can kind of take it from there and decide if this
We
is
can
a
look at 'em
continued
and-
conversation or if you're comfortable with what we've already got, or is that what I'm hearing?
Great, we might as well put it on next month's agenda just to
Just
wrap
revisit.
up, if nothing else, and
Okay.
see where we're at.
Okay. Next item then is general business. Any other general business?
Nothing for me.
Anything else under general business to bring up?
I would just say, maybe we could take a moment and talk about the events that we've had. And we've already talked about some of them, the opening up of the pickleball court.
Those are member reports.
Those are, yeah.
Oh, that's member reports. My apologies.
Okay, let's go to member reports then. Got your head in the
Well, first of all, I want to compliment how quickly the Parks Department responded to a request for a pickleball court. I mean, it may not be a permanent feature, it may be. I think it's kind of a trial thing as I understand it, but it seemed to me that, I don't know how long before I came on this committee that this group came before you, but I don't think it took too long to find and identify an appropriate area that has some real potential, and I simply want to compliment on the lack of long bureaucracy in the Parks Department and getting something going when the possibilities come forward. Thank you, Scott. And I think we had several. Joyce was there, Bob was there, I was there.
Brian.
Well, he's not one of our practice members.
Commissioner Shaw cut the ribbon.
He was overseeing.
Anyway, I guess, I don't know, Joyce, you were out there pickleballing, weren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was right beside you. We
I know you were.
We had trainers.
For some reason, they brought me a pickleball paddle, so I have a pickleball paddle.
How many people were there?
Lots. There were tons of people. This was such a well-planned event, and the Pickleball Association, they had people coming from all over the metro area. But we met the ranked 5-star pickleball player that lives right here in Oregon City, who's going to be having evening open sessions. They're going to be posting those times so that there'll be somebody from the association there at the pickleball locker that can get out the equipment and show people how to use the equipment. And Doug and I spent 15 minutes playing pickleball. It was a great experience. But for me, it was just exciting to be in a city park, and especially those tennis courts that I'd never seen anybody use any time I'd walked past them, to have 50 people there.
At least.
It was
They set up
very exciting.
five courts were set up for operation there. Then they had the area where people gathered. When we got there early, and all the courts were occupied, they then organized it so newbies come in with some of the people that knew what they were doing, so they could play a bit, and it was extremely well done, well organized.
I actually received a follow-up email, kind of a summary report from one of the representatives from the Pickleball Association, and they indicated that their numbers count were that they had 80 participants on Saturday.
Oh my goodness!
Because people were coming and going.
Yeah,
yes.
so they indicated 80, which is good. That's a lot of folks for a new event and a first time. And to the comment that you made, Doug, about turning this around so quickly, my commendation would be to the folks from the organization. They were obviously persistent in coming to us, even before they showed up at PRAC meetings. They were contacting me frequently and kind of figuring out how to get in front of the right person or people, and eventually they worked into the PRAC group, and you all made a recommendation, and it was an easy one for us to support, and my compliments to that group, because it is not the norm, and I don't mean this to sound derogatory to anybody, but we get a lot of different groups that have specific interests and want to do this facility or that thing, and can I build this, and why can't you put this kind of thing in a park? These folks came forward and said, all we want to do is find a location, we'll do the rest. And that's exactly what they did. We figured out an underutilized court at the park at Hillendale, and we focused on that. Once we came to that conclusion, they came in. We did help power wash the courts so they could paint. They came in and did their painting, because they do that. They provide all the equipment. They did all the publicity to get the event started. They provide the locker box, I think you called it, Joyce, to have the equipment stored on site. And they put their money where their mouth is and did what they said they were going to do, and it was very successful. And I think it seems like something that might continue to be something of interest for our community. So it's a great activity. There was never any question about that. It was just, okay, you're asking us to do something, and how much time can we spend doing it? Kind of like some of the other maintenance discussions tonight. We're so constrained and spread out, but these folks said, we just want a location, and we want to coordinate with you, but we'll do the rest of the work. And that's pretty much what they did. It's exactly what they did, and then some. And now they're working with us on, can we identify some set times that we can just put up a sign and say, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from these times to these times, these courts are reserved for pickleball use only. And it's still going to be open for tennis and other uses, but we're just going to look at some certain times, and then they're going to promote that and keep people coming. And so we'll see how it goes, but I couldn't agree more. But a lot of that credit goes back to the group for really following through.
I did have a question that came up when I was there talking to, I think Brian and I were talking about parking, that if, we get these kind of crowds, is there an agreement with the manufacturing, the companies that own those parking, or is the city at some point going to have to consider building parking, or what?
Yeah, we'll have to work through that. There's no formal agreement, just to answer your question. I know that on kind of non-business hours for that business park back there, if you've ever been to one of the baseball games on that particular field and back by the tennis court, almost everybody parks back there, and I don't know that, I've never heard of a complaint about anybody doing that, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, one step at a time. I guess those are good problems that we could maybe be addressing.
We didn't say who cut the ribbon.
Commissioner Shaw?
Commissioner Shaw cut the ribbon.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, other
I just wanted to make a comment back on that statement while we're on the topic, that, and I may be overstating the obvious, but to me it's really important, is much of the time we're focused on playgrounds, swim lessons, and things that affect a very narrow age group in the city. And this is the first thing that I've ever been involved in where we've made a significant enhancement to one of our parks and added capacity for a different generation. I mean,
Good point.
so like Doug said, I mean, it compliments to a lot of people because it's really neat.
Okay, other member reports. Commissioner.
One of the things when we were up there is that they were also asking about Ladderette Park. So we all know Ladderette Park. I don't know what else we could do with that. This could be another spot for these guys too. So
Could you come up and identify yourself, say whether you're a resident of the city, and so we can catch it on the tapes?
Are you going to put me on 3 minutes or what? Please throw that out.
Well, we've talked about
We're gonna try.
in that with that focus before too. So I think that's really if we look at if we think of what the next action item is, this was just to get us out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
Really, we had talked about Ladderette as the follow-up, so we probably shouldn't lose sight or lose momentum on what could possibly be done there.
Well,
I know Scott's probably taking a deep breath. Okay, we got this up. But
yeah, no, I'd love to see that. I'd love to see Ladderette get improved, and if this group wants to work with us, we'd certainly welcome that opportunity. But we'll see, one step at a time. Yeah.
Let's continue with our member reports. You had the floor, Sean. Go ahead.
all I wanted to bring up, I think Scott asked one of us that were in attendance to bring it up, is I attended the Metro Newell Creek Canyon meeting a night or two ago, and I think for those of you that weren't there, the takeaways right now are they showed a couple designs for a promenade area. I think that's what they called it. Gateway entrance.
Yeah.
So basically off the parking lot, a small park aspect on the level, on the top level. And they just purchased property out on that top area that allows this entrance. And then the other element is related to trails. They showed 3 different concepts. One was trails where there were hiking trails and bike trails, and the 2 were completely separate. There was a system where they were completely blended, and there was a system where they were mostly separate, but a middle trail from the bottom of the canyon back out would be a one-way for bicycles, so it was a one-way up to allow. And the key to that one was so that hikers could get down into the bicycle area, because there was some key pieces of scenery or not history, but there. So they took input as to what our opinions were, and I was a little disappointed that it took a year almost off between the last meeting and this. It seemed like they really lost momentum, but it's good to see this going again, and hopefully it continues.
Okay.
Nothing to report?
Nothing for me.
I'm good.
Wow.
One thing, if I might, on on that entryway, which incidentally is, in case somebody doesn't know it, Warner Parrott it's got another street name as it goes by the Bank of the West. There's that entryway, so probably a good entryway. I want to point out that Metro actually has been involved in other stakeholder groups, people that have lived right around the canyon and so forth, that have had discussions. So even though there haven't been the open houses, there have been dialogues that have been continuing all through that period.
I'm going to give mine last.
Okay,
George.
just to let you know that went to the pickleball event. Great time. I got some great pictures on my camera because somebody took my phone and was taking pictures during the ribbon cutting. So we've got some fun pictures from that. And from there, went to the slide goodbye, swing and slide goodbye. That was a lot of fun. If you're my friend on Facebook, you saw me going down the slide. And then to drive by a couple days later and see them gone. I'm just really glad that I did it, and I hope a lot of people did. In fact, there were a lot of kids there that day. They provided bubble solution for them. The kids, I have great pictures of the kids climbing up the stairs on the slide and sitting at the top, and then all the way down the steps, several children with their bubbles, just blowing bubbles. That was just really fun to do, and it was nice swinging next to the two gentlemen here. So both Bob and Doug, we all got on the swings together.
I bailed out. You didn't bail out.
I didn't. I stopped and got properly off of my swing.
It's a very bad example to you.
But so lots of fun things going on in the park. Looking forward to the summer. Looking forward to the concerts in the park down at the end of the trail. Uncovered Wagons coming up. But the Newell Canyon, and it is true because we are part of the stakeholder group in our neighborhood. We do see a lot of what's going on down there. It took a long time to get that property purchased, and then there were also a lot of contingencies on getting that cleaned up before Metro would purchase it. So a company was hired to do that. That spent several days hauling tons of trash and garbage out of the canyon. So that is just, it's so exciting to see that come together. And at this point, I don't really care how the paths and the trails are put down in the canyon as long as they are there. I just want something going on. So again, it's exciting. I'm glad for the partnership that we have with Metro, the partnership with the county on some of the other walks and the state. But we have so much to be proud of in Oregon City.
Should I add one thing there to the closing of the sides and so forth? Maureen is not a proper librarian. I mean, she is not prim and proper librarian. She was out there swinging with us too, very high, and so I like to call her Marion, but she doesn't have that personality really.
Roger.
I'm pretty excited about Mule Creek too, and we're going to be kind of sandwiched in on both sides with these big, really neat projects for the city, and it's just totally exciting. And to be able to view the wildlife that's and help propagate it, so that's nearby, and so we can experience it. On the slide, well, I'm pretty sad about the old slide going. And after having crossed paths with Commissioner Smith and hearing him talk about every time we lose something, I know that slide was one of the big historical things, but it was historical in nature. So I'm sad to see that go because like Commissioner Smith says, once we lose it, it's gone. And I hope that in the future we can think about that part of the issue when we're discussing the building now that's condemned, that is waiting to see what's going to happen with that, and it's just I don't know where and how that fits into giving our city a different identity than other cities that are putting in new areas like we're putting in. Mm-hmm. And I hope that we can keep it as much as we can from our past. And then right now, I'll go into my Pioneer Recreation Center outline here. Let's see. So one, Pioneer Center recreation trips are full until fall. 2, the Pioneer Center offers space and tables for rent during the McLaughlin neighborhood sale on August 14th. All the spaces for the garage sale have been sold. 3, the Pioneer staff will participate in 3 community events. The Beaver Creek Backyard Bash on July 11th, Senior Day at the Farmers Market, and Senior Day at Clackamas County Fair. 4, on July 24th, a new Pioneer Center class will start, how to dehydrate and preserve food. Number 5, on August 22nd, the King's Raven Winery will be hosting a Meals on Wheels fundraiser called Stargazing and Wine Tasting from 6 to 9 p.m. 6, the Pioneer Center received a donation of fans from Home Depot for Meals on Wheels clients. Probably help out this weekend. Maybe. 7 hikes have started and will continue through the summer. And that's all I have.
Can I make one more comment on the slide and the swing? Scott, Maureen told me that they were dismantled and they can be used for artwork. Is that right? The possibility is there?
Yes. So we're storing that at a city site in its disassembled condition, and there's been some discussion about turning the old slide into some type of an art piece of some sort. So nothing's been decided, but that's been discussed.
So it's not going in the scrap metal heap?
No.
Okay, it's my turn.
Can I make one?
Go.
Sorry, it passed by me. And just one quick comment about Newell Creek Canyon. I'm really pleased. We're a city of firsts, and Metro has not been very open to bicycles on trails on their lands. And so they're really dipping the toe in the water with Newell Creek Canyon, and I think that's a real privilege. And I think the cycling community really needs to prove themselves. There are people in our community that have, I would say, some legitimate concerns, but there are also some irrational fears. And so, I think there's a real opportunity for us for the cycling community and the hiking community to work together and learn to love each other. So.
Well, I've got a very short report. I attended the pickleball event, and the issue of parking came up, and that's already been discussed here. From there, I went down to the library and had a good time riding the swing and the slide with Joyce and Doug and Maureen. And I want to take this opportunity to mention one of our members that got a national award. And she's kept it kind of a secret, but I'm going to blow her cover. And right here in this little paper,
State.
Joyce Gifford got the national...
No, state.
State, excuse me, I misread that. The State Oregon Substitute Teacher of the Year, so congratulations, Joyce.
Thank you.
That's really wonderful. They say nice things about you here, but
All lives.
you can read those.
What can we get away with?
And I was thinking since our last meeting, that we had a pretty tough meeting going over some library issues about the length of time that Oregon City has been dealing with a new library. And this actually goes back 25 or 30 years. And when Doug was on the library board and with some other good people. And there was even a bond issue that passed. There were more yes votes than no votes. But there weren't enough people that voted, so it didn't really pass. As it turned out, by studying the result, to get to the 50% turnout, if all those people that didn't vote had voted no, it would have passed anyway. So I don't know what the number was, 55 or 58 yes to 40-some% no, but it didn't pass. The city had an option on a piece of property up by the red soils for a library building. And of course, we paid money for the option, but we couldn't use it. Then we moved into the Danielson grocery store, and we were there for several years. And they wanted to sell the building, so we had to move. Came back to Carnegie, stored books, I guess, around town. And then recently a bond issue passed. There was a great discussion about where are we going to build this new structure. The city decided we already owned a place, so we're going to have it at the current Carnegie location. There were endless issues about that. Is it a one-story or a two-story, or what are we going to do? PRAC made a recommendation we supported a two-story, but we had two choices. And if the city wanted to go to a one-story, we wanted to make up for the lost park space in the McLaughlin neighborhood. But the city voted to have a two-story building. Then the issues became the slide and the swing and the ground material. So those were resolved tonight. But it's been 25 or 30 years getting down to the swing and the slide and the material. It's been a long journey. And I, for one, feel very good that we are where we are. And with that, we are on staff reports.
Okay. Ermitinger House project update. Nothing significant to report, just continuing to work on what we call our punch list items, which are kind of the finish up items. And at some point I'll be letting you know more about, as we move forward to some type of reopening. We'll be discussing that probably with this group in some future meetings. Cove development update. I gave you an update at the last PRAC meeting that about the proposed development that looks to be going forward for that site. And then since that last meeting, there have been a couple of questions that have come up with some PRAC members, and I just wanted to cover those issues and also some things that came up sort of in a public forum on a Facebook page or something to that effect. And I met with our Economic Development Director, Eric Underwood, to kind of review those issues so that I could give you a report here tonight. And those two things had to do with public access of the cove during the construction period and after the construction. And also there have been some questions that have been brought forward to staff, and I think PRAC members have heard some of this about adding some additional equipment on the trail or near the trail, such as bike racks and some things like that. So with those questions and with the meeting I had with Eric Underwood, here are kind of the summary points there. Regarding the access, or actually let me talk about the placing some additional equipment down there. We're calling it park-like equipment in an area that would soon be a construction zone potentially. The position right now of the Economic Development Director, and I support this, is that it's not an efficient use of our resources to install any new equipment in that area, as they very well may just need to be removed or moved again and replaced again. We don't want to place any new equipment in the area when the property would be under potential new ownership as well, because there's some still potential property types of transactions and things. As far as the public access of the cove, and specifically one of the concerns was, well, there's questions about the access of the trail, but also, we have a pretty strong open water swimming group that uses the cove on a regular basis. It's become a real go-to site for that type of an activity. And so there were some questions about access in general to the cove. In regard to that, Eric's response is this. There is the potential that public access is uncertain. Well, public access is uncertain during construction periods, and potentially very limited due to the necessary construction fencing and equipment that might be utilized. These are all things that are still kind of in flux and not absolute yet. So these are sort of generic terms. The duration of the construction period for the site could be over the course of several years. We've got a first phase that's been discussed that could be happening potentially in the near future. But the total build out of that site, of course, could be over a number of years. And to achieve full build out in all the different areas, there may be different points of pretty significant limitations of access just because of construction processes. And then the other question was sort of once the project is completed, how would the access look? What would the public access be? And the answer to that is that the developer that the city is currently working with, but also kind of the master plan of that site, calls for creating and maintaining areas that allow for public access to the cove and to trails, and there's also some plans for future parkland in there. So the ultimate goal is to create even improved access from where it is now. But certainly there will be some challenges along the way of the development process, and we'll work through those. As a side note, Mr. Underwood noted that the developer is quite aware of the very active and very vocal swimmers group that would like to continue to use that body of water, and the developer believes that their interest is important to the cove. So with that understanding, we would hope that we'll be able to do the best that we can to work through those things. So,
if I may,
sure.
This has been must have been an 8-year process from the time the group. It was another group of developers, but they've been hired as consultants to this developer. And that agreement that was written at that time required them to put in another pathway to connect to the trail system while they're doing construction. And I think Eric Underwood wasn't here at that time. I think they ought to look at that, because particularly when they're doing the work on I guess it's the East Bank, they probably have the capability of running a trail. It may not go directly on the cove, but it could connect back into the trail system along the river. And that was a strong specification that we made at that time. And I realize it's a different group. I realize the phasing is different than it was originally, but a lot of money and effort went into establishing that original trail. It cost twice as much as they thought it would because of contaminants that were at the trail site and so forth. And we should try to have public access to it. It might have to be a detour form, but through that construction period.
I agree, Doug, and I was the person who kicked up this conversation, and that was my recollection from back in the day on PRAC. And it seems like back then PRAC was highly involved. We were getting input from these developers just as much as the city commission. They would present to us plans, and you saw that as mayor and even before. And what's going on today, I really don't have a good feeling for. They've never presented here. And so that's what my concern was too, is I thought I remembered access kind of guarantees. And my fear, if they're closed for 2 weeks during it because they have to deal with something, that's one thing. But my fear is putting up construction fencing, and then you see heavy equipment stored behind it for 6 to 9 months. Then that's not in keeping with the spirit of the goals and agreements. So I think we're looking at you to pick up on our wishes and pass that along. And specifically, I agree, because Mr. Underwood was not here then, has never spoken to us, and probably doesn't have a feeling for our concerns or desires either.
Yeah, and I would just note, I completely understand what you're talking about. As you mentioned, Doug, it's been at least, I think, 8 years or possibly more, or whatever it's been. There have been now a number of iterations of agreements because they've expired, and then renegotiated different agreements, and the project has changed significantly from what it was originally. So I'm very aware of that initial objective to maintain that trail connection somehow. And we'll try to carry that message. One thing I did talk with Eric Underwood about is potentially, as things continue to move forward, it might make sense to have him come here and give a short presentation about the project, and maybe show some slides, and then you could also express those concerns personally. But of course, I'm in conversations with him. So
my understanding is that Ed Darrow and Randy Tyler are still connected to the what would it be, the northern section, and the new company is dealing primarily with the section behind, or exclusively the section behind the Oregon City Shopping Center. Is that correct?
I think that's mostly correct. I would prefer Eric address like specific kind of contractual and those types of things. But generally, that's right.
So what I've heard, we had Ed and Randy come and give a presentation to the Business Alliance, and my understanding is that that the portion behind the shopping center will start pretty soon, breaking ground, I think this summer maybe.
That's the phase that that I reported on last meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
But then the other part that would be have direct access to the cove, that will be sometime
That's
in
a future
the
development
future.
phase.
And I think, I don't know if it would be, since Ed and Randy still control, as far as my understanding, that section, it might be appropriate for them to come in, along with Eric and give a presentation, and we can talk about those agreements.
I'll
and-
explore those things and see what we can
Good.
come up with. Or what
That's
makes
who's
sense.
been here before. That's who I've
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're correct.
Okay,
Oops, sorry. Other questions
Oh.
about that before I moved on to the next?
no,
The adopted 2015, actually, we're calling them 2015-16 goals now, so to cover a 2-year period. I distributed a hard copy of those to you, and that's the version that we discussed last time and that you adopted. If you have any questions about that, that's just for your reference, but also if you'd like that electronically, I'd be happy to send that to you. Just let me know. And also, if you find any errors or discrepancies in that, by all means, please let me know. The recreation update, that was distributed to you via email. If you have any questions on that, please let us know. A couple of other quick things here. The Clackamat boat ramp, I've discussed that with you before, and that we're engaging in a hydrology study that's being funded by the Oregon State Marine Board. We did an RFP. We closed that recently. We received 4 proposals. And we'll be doing a consultant selection process here in the coming couple of weeks or so.
I could comment on that? Just really quickly, I meant to do this under my member report. I actually went kayaking last night and put in on the ramp, and I was shocked at its condition. So if you haven't been down there recently, there are rapids in front of the ramp.
I've never seen that before.
I've never seen that before. It absolutely nothing like I remembered at all. So
I just had
go
a-
look. Just to drive down there, walk down, come back and leave. But it's worth it.
I had a meeting down there this week and stood there on that ramp 2-3 days ago, and it's just, I've never seen the river in that condition, that low, or the wave. But yeah, we've definitely got some changes in the hydrology, which is why we're looking at how to rebuild this ramp carefully. So, and then the last thing I've got is the end of the Oregon Trail site, the new stage. If you've been by there at all recently, you'll notice that looks, I think, good. And it was done again as a project for the high school construction group. Our staff have done a little bit of the finish work, as is sometimes the case with those projects. But we're basically wrapping that project up, and that stage will be ready to go for our summer concerts in the park, which start in 2 or 3 weeks. I can't remember. 2 or 3 Thursdays from now. But anyway, we're looking forward to that. I think that stage is going to be a tremendous improvement to that site. So that's all I've got.
anything else for good of the order?
Well, could on number
Roger.
2, do you think Cove would fit in there? Can we can't change those now, can we? Or did we vote on those?
They've been approved.
Okay.
Yeah, we
All
voted
right.
on them.
Never mind. I was thinking.
We'll support it nonetheless, in general.
Well, I guess we're adjourned. Next, oops,